that the invasion has stalled. Intelligence sources I've talked to say that may not be entirely the correct assessment of the ground truth situation. Certainly, the battle plan has moved much slower in terms of what the Russians wanted than where we're at on day 7. This is, you can see the Russian-occupied areas in red. However, time versus distance, the Russian army is moving much faster in Ukraine than the United States Army moved in Iraq, specifically in the southern part of the country. They had a huge base here in Crimea. This is the naval base they took in 2014. You can see they moved out here. The Russians just took the town of Kherson here, which gives them a straight shot to Odessa. That is the last Ukrainian outpost on the Black Sea, critical infrastructure for the Ukrainians. They'll cut that off, so they'll own the entire south. They are very, very close to having a land bridge from Crimea all the way here through Russian-occupied eastern Ukraine back into Mother Russia. The key point here is the town of Mariupol. That was a flashpoint during the 2014 invasion. The Ukrainians got it back. Right now, the Russians are fighting for it as we speak. So this is the battle in the southern theater, if you will. Eastern theater now will go here. This is Kharkiv. Right now, the Russians have Kharkiv all but surrounded. They've moved in here, and they've pushed in here. Once you get Kharkiv, that gives you a straight shot over to Kyiv, which is the capital. That is the main holdout. That right now is the entire ball game in terms of breaking the back of the Ukrainian resistance. We've heard about the convoy that is stalled, a 40-mile convoy of tanks, armor, resupply, fuel trucks, and the like. That's coming from Belarus here, and then also from Russia here. The convoy is stalled somewhere right about there, just northeast of Kyiv. The troops from Belarus is key as well. One more theater that we understand might be opened, and this would be key as well, which is out of Belarus, south here. If they are able to cut off Lviv here from Kyiv, you cut the Ukrainians' resupply lines, their ability to get troops and weapons, and the resupplied weapons from Poland and Slovakia and the other NATO countries into any part of the rest of Ukraine. That's the ball game right there. What is the full ball game? Well, the Belarusian president might have tipped his hand a little bit. Belarus is really Russia's only friend in Europe. We'll take this off. There was a map. This is the map right now near Kyiv. We'll go back through here. You can see this is where the convoy is stalled. You might remember that the Ukrainians cut the bridge here and here to prevent these troops from coming over. Now we'll go to the Belarus, Russia's only friend, and Russia has allowed them to use their military facilities. This is the Belarusian president who might have let the cat out of the bag. You can see here on his map, we'll take his map. He was doing a presentation to his defense forces. Here is his map that we have recreated. It showed possible attack routes into Moldova from Ukraine. That would be the second country that Vladimir Putin is trying to take over. Switch back now to the full map of Ukraine. The one thing that the Russians do not have, we'll get into this in a minute, is air superiority. There are still Ukrainian fighter jets. There's still Russian fighters being shot down, Russian transport planes being shot down by surface-to-air missiles. The Russian invasion, in a minute, we'll show you the U.S. intel on where exactly the Russians are getting bogged down. That's an important part. Fuel and food to the Russian army. Air superiority is still a big deal, and the Russians right now are trying to bomb the rest of the Ukrainian supply routes here and here where the arms are coming into Kyiv. Robert Sherman is a couple of hundred miles from Lviv. Speaking of air superiority or lack thereof by the Ukrainians, he was under a Russian air attack just a couple of hours ago. Take a listen.
We had to evacuate. If you can hear overhead, air raid sirens are going off right now, so we are currently attempting to seek shelter.
A couple of things to note in that video. Obviously, Robert and his crew is doing the right thing by seeking shelter. Still saw cars driving on the roads. There's a lot of Ukrainians who realize they are living in a time of war. They must persevere. It's the very same mentality you see in Israel during air raid sirens. Again, they're right about here. A lot of the people who have stayed realize that if the Russians are able to break through Kyiv, they will now be on the front lines. Take a listen to one of the groups that Robert talked to.
We do feel kind of proud of our people. We feel proud of our army, of our president, and that we are all uniting. And actually, it's quite inspiring, I think, the way people unite all over the Ukraine. Because just civilians, they go to the roads, they stop tanks, and they say, no, you won't go. Just people without any weapons. So this is kind of impressive.
It is actually incredibly impressive. We're going to get to the U.S. intelligence in just a minute about how the Ukrainians are able to hold out. There are 40 million people in this country who are taking up arms against the Russians. So not only do the Russians have to take the individual cities, in the specific cities so they control the highways, but even though you see these areas in red here, it's unclear how much of the countryside is really controlled by the Russians. Specifically, how many Ukrainians are lying in wait in the countryside as these columns move down to ambush the Russian military columns with everything from RPGs and anti-tank weapons to Molotov cocktails. Important because the Russian army uses maps, not GPSs. So road signs in Ukraine mean something. Some are a little humorous. They put up pictures of Vladimir Putin with a big symbol through his face. However, they're now starting to turn roadsides around and take them down to confuse Russian troops as they go through, with also some notes. Welcome to hell in Russian. Not much to hardened soldiers, but to conscripts who thought they were going on a training exercise for the Russian military, this is significant. There's a long history of this. The UK, ahead of the Nazi invasion, turned a lot of their road signs around and took them down in case the Nazis invaded in the UK. The Pentagon says Russia is having unexpected problems projecting this force any farther than here. Why? Because of their supply lines. And with that, we bring in Kellie Meyer with the Pentagon's assessment of some of the problems that the Russian military has been going through. Hi, Kellie.
Hey, Leland, well, you're left wondering if Russia threw in the JV team to start the fight here. We're seeing videos of Russian tanks stranded on the side of the road after running out of gas. Ukrainians joking they'll give them a lift back to Russia. We're also seeing reports Russian soldiers are running out of food. A senior defense official couldn't confirm those reports, but they say Russian morale is low, and we're also seeing them completely just flubbing their mission right now. Leland?
All right. The Russians really didn't expect the Ukrainian resistance. What does the Pentagon credit to the success of the Ukrainian resistance, not only their military, but also the civilian population that's taken up arms?
That's right. Well, that 40-mile-long convoy being held up, of course, from those mistakes we just talked about, but largely due to the resistance, like you said, from the Ukrainian people, not only soldiers, but regular civilians picking up weapons and fighting back. Senior defense officials tell us the weapons the U.S. and allies are sending, especially the Stinger missiles, are getting into the hands of Ukrainians, and they're using them well. But the Pentagon is still curbing any optimism. Take a listen.
The Russians have a significant amount of combat power applied in Ukraine, and they still have some significant combat power that they have not engaged in the fight, and we need to be mindful of that.
And Leland, I want to add here, we're told that Russia is becoming increasingly aggressive. You can only imagine after their troops becoming the laughingstock of the Ukrainians there, that they're going to regroup and likely come back even stronger. So those next few days are going to be ones to watch. Leland?
Yeah, no question in terms of seeing how the Russians change. You said whether or not the Russians put the JV team in the beginning. Does the Pentagon have anything that they're watching for specifically, or that your sources have said will represent a significant change in Russian doctrine and tactics from the Pentagon's intel perspective?
Well, they were asked about, whether it was the C team or the A team that was sent out here first when we were talking with senior defense officials. They said they don't have that kind of assessment. They are just seeing the Ukrainian forces really fight back here. And they're also seeing the logistical challenges they are having. But as the spokesperson, John Kirby, said they are going to regroup. They are going to learn from these mistakes, and they still have significant combat power that he says they haven't even touched into yet. Leland?
Yeah, and especially in terms of weapons and bombs and tactics to use on cities. As von Clausewitz said, to the Ukrainians' credit, morality in war matters. The Ukrainians have the high ground on that. Kellie Meyer with some great reporting from Washington. Kellie, thank you. Thanks for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.